Hello, TandLers. Welcome back to TandL Talks, the podcast for, about, and featuring fabulous educators. I'm your host, Nancy. Today's conversation is one I've been especially excited about because it shines a light on what deep, authentic learning can really look like for our students. We're talking about AP research and the presentation and oral defense, often called PODs, a capstone experience that asks students not just to learn, but to think, question, reflect, and defend their thinking. Joining me in the TandL Clubhouse are four incredible educators from across our system, Brandy, Liz, Sarah, and Matt. They are the teachers who support students through this challenging and powerful work every year. Together, we explore what pods really are, what students learn through the process, and why curiosity, reflection, and ownership matter so much, not just in high school, but starting all the way back in elementary school. Whether you teach kindergarten or we're seniors, whether you've ever set foot in an AP classroom or not, this conversation is about the kind of learners we are growing and the experiences that help students see themselves as thinkers and contributors. So settle in, you're going to hear stories, insights, and moments that remind us why teaching matters so deeply. Let's get started. Hello, TandLers. Today in the TandL Clubhouse, we have three of our district AP teachers. AP for our elementary friends stands for Advanced Placement. And they're going to talk to us about AP pods. So first, I'll just ask you each to introduce yourselves.
I'm Sarah Sherry from Puyallup High School.
Elizabeth Hallberg from Rogers High School.
Brandy Gross from Emerald Ridge.
And Matt White from ESC.
Right. One of the questions I always like to start out with is, can you just think of a teacher who had a big impact on you, maybe when you were a student or maybe even a colleague?
Sure. My teacher that had the largest impact on me in high school was my speech and debate coach. And I also not only teach AP research, but I also teach speech and debate. Bernice Sir was a mentor. And when I became a coach, she mentored me again as a coach. So not just as a student, but we became lifelong friends.
Thank you.
I guess when I think back to high school, at least, Wilkinson was one teacher that really meant a lot to me. He was my AP Lit teacher. So when I later got the chance to become an AP Lit teacher myself, I think back a lot to the things that he did in the classroom that I really appreciated, and the way that things get vibed in that space and the things that we got the chance to engage with. And that meant a lot to me. I also have been thinking a lot about another teacher with a W name, coincidentally, Wilshire, who was my AP US history teacher. And I really appreciated his intriguing classroom practices and his bravery about content.
I had two really wonderful English teachers in high school. We didn't have AP at our school. We just had honors. But Mrs. Hendricks and Mrs. Bauer were my English teachers for sophomore, junior, and senior year. And they were very scary at first because they held us to really high standards, but I so appreciated that. And I still have the notes that Mrs. Bauer used to write out for us in longhand on a legal notepad, basically like our modern version of Spark Notes, but better. And I was never going to be an English teacher, but I kept them all and I still have them and refer to them when I'm going to be teaching some of the same texts. They just were so smart, and they made being smart about literature so interesting and fun.
Bill Tatum, a.k.a. Commie Bill. Yeah, my senior social studies teacher. What do we call it? Here we call it Contemporary World Problems. I don't remember what the class is called then. But Bill was fantastic. We had debates, and I debated Bill on a regular basis. He thought that everything communist was a great idea, which was awesome because I just enjoyed the having to think through things, having the opportunity to be able to present or think and speak and argue made me become a better thinker about what I believed or what I should believe or why government does what it does or all the things. And lo and behold, one day I became a social studies teacher. Thank you, Commie Bill.
It is. I love hearing these stories because it's that reminder that the impact we have as teachers is amazing. It lasts forever and ever. And I think the smiles that all of you had on your faces as you were sharing your stories, it's just a powerful, powerful profession. So thank you for sharing. So for listeners who might be new to AP research, how do you describe pods in plain language?
POD stands for Presentation and Oral Defense, and I think most people are familiar with the idea of a college student defending their thesis. And so I usually describe it in that way, where you are before a panel and you have to defend the work that you have done all year long in this class, or in this case, in our research class, and then be prepared to ask or answer questions about that research that you've done. It's really exactly the same as defending a thesis, just at a high school level.
It's a nice distinction because Brandy was saying they get the chance to know the questions in advance. And so it's kind of like baby dissertation because they get the chance to get closer to the level of like collegiate level thinking that they'll need to maybe do later in their lives, or at least they get to kind of get the chance to prepare their thinking a little bit to defend the things that they ultimately have been working on for months.
And that process of speaking in front of a panel, not a panel of their peers, not a panel of teachers that they know and see on a regular basis, but rather a panel of other adults. And for a lot of students, learning to speak to adults, with adults, in front of adults, that's a real skill that they struggle to develop. But I think PODS really gives them a chance to practice and hone that skill.
Right. I have had the opportunity to sit in on pods with your students the last several years. And the first time I was just blown away. I mean, I was just blown away by the work that kids put into things and their composure. And I remember thinking the first time, oh my gosh, imagine how I would have felt walking into my freshman year of college, having had this experience with research, with presentation, all of that. So what a powerful experience for kids. What misconceptions do kids have about pods, and how do you help them move through them?
I think some of them, at least initially, I mean, they walk into the room sometimes and they are terrified. So I think some of them feel, not all, but there is a portion of the group that is definitely, like Sarah was saying, it is a serious thing and it should be taken with modicum of respect. You're trying to bring your fabulous best self, but at the same time, everybody that is there in the room is there to listen to you and they're interested in what you have to say. So it's not actually like a horrifying thing with, you're not going in front of a firing squad, right? This is something where people are like really intrigued by what you are actually up to.
I had some of my students last week. They go, "Oh, are you, Mrs. Gross, when you watch us during pods, are you disappointed?" I said, "No, not at all." I go, "I really truly feel like a parent at this point because I know the research you've done all year long. The other panelists don't, and it's just a chance for me to sit back and watch you share what you've done all year with other people." But I go, it's more like a proud mom moment. Like, I know what's been happening. I always say that I feel like teenagers get such a bad rap, and I tell them that I try to beat the drum out there for how incredible these teenagers are, and this is one of those chances I feel like where they get to share what's really happening. I think there's such a disconnect between what actually happens in schools and what the rest of the community feels happens in schools. For whatever reason, we just don't get to see each other, and this is kind of a small opportunity where the community gets to see really what's going on.
The oral defense asks students to reflect on their process and their decisions. What does this reveal to you about student learning that maybe a written paper wouldn't?
Sometimes I don't think that they understand what they've done until they articulate it out loud that way. Because I think that we are more like verbal processing people than sometimes we give ourselves credit for. So even though I've been there, like Brandy was saying, we're there all year and we get the chance to actually see all of these tiny steps they take along the way. But there's always surprises that happen during pods where I'm like, oh, that's what you were actually thinking about, or that was kind of something that you've actually worked out the tangle of during the course of things. And that's not always something that I understand until that moment either.
The beginning of the year, I share a little comic with the students, and it says what people think research is, and it has 2 dots and a direct line that connects them. What research really is, and it has the 2 dots, and it has just a giant knot in them. And I think this is a chance for them to unravel that knot, to show us what was in that knot, to show us the curves and the ambiguity that they worked themselves through. And I think there's power in vocalizing that. The second part of your question had to do with what does that tell us about schools? And I think a lot of times I teach a gen ed senior English also, and I think students become very used to having point A, point B, and a straight line that connects. And so part of the challenge of this class is that we don't do that. And we don't necessarily give them the directions to get directly from point A to point B. Part of the process of research is finding their own way there. So we can ask them questions, we can encourage them, but we're not saying, now you go do this. This is the next step. Please make this happen now. So there is a lot of that untangling that they have to do mentally in order to process the paper as well as the speech, as the pod.
It's cool when they can talk about that too, right? In the presentations, when they'll talk about, oh, I started down this road, but then that didn't work because, and I had to shift gears. That's cool.
And it's so many students throughout the year, I have to continually reassure them that when they start on a path and it doesn't turn out right, they are very used to that being a mistake.
Right.
Like I did something wrong. And it's really hard for them to, especially if you have kids that are used to always, if I do this, I'll get the A. If I do this, the right thing will happen. I guess it's helping them to understand that mistakes or errors or having to readjust is not the wrong thing. That is a part of the process, and it's an important part. And some of the kids, I think they really learn from that. Some of the kids, it's still hard at the end of the year when we ask them to make a hypothesis before they actually engage in the methods of their research about what they think the answer to their research question will be. And I capture all of them digitally so I can hold on to those because they often have a hard time remembering what they thought the answer would be months later. But it's so interesting that they're like, oh, I was wrong. My hypothesis was wrong. What does that mean? And we were just talking the other day that sometimes I feel the kids that did get it wrong do better in the pods because so much of the pods is about being reflective about your work and not knowing all the answers and being able to figure out why you didn't know them later really forces them to reflect, to think about that. I think sometimes the kids that, hypothesize correctly and then, their analysis is the same as what they originally hypothesized, they almost miss that opportunity, that reflective chance to really think about how they untangled that knot, like Sarah was saying.
How do kids in your class collaborate with one another? They're all doing their separate research projects that are very, very different. But what does collaboration among students look like?
We try to, because the College Board doesn't allow us to score any part of their paper, even though they're working on it all year, because it's their test. It would be like us helping them with their test. And so we really have to instruct the students on how to collaborate and then put that into motion and put those opportunities into motion, having them work together. Like at the beginning of the year, we have them work together to try to see if the other kid actually has a gap and the other kids are trying to search it out and see if they can bust it. being able to peer review the writing that they've done, to talk about their ideas. They have to be able to collaborate because, again, our hands are really tied. And so we have to teach the students how to teach each other, if you will.
Right.
Yeah, they have a lot of responsibilities when it comes to supporting each other in that work.
And that's initially set up for them in seminar because research is the second portion of a capstone diploma. So students first start an AP seminar, and a lot of AP seminar has to do with group work and has to do with building those relationships and being able to speak bravely about, hey, I think you could try this, or I think this maybe isn't your best work. How can we go back and buffet this up? Because the group gets graded. So the whole group wants to do better. And so setting that foundation in seminar really gives them an easier spot to work from in research. It gives them some of those initial brave steps.
Where do you see kids experiencing the most intellectual growth through the POTS process?
That's a great question.
I would say when it comes down to analysis, a lot of times going through and the review of literature, they can get the basic. That comes fairly easily. Synthesis is a hard part of that, but the review of literature is a fairly easy step. Choosing a methodology stems out of, aligns with what they develop in their literature review. But when it comes down to actually putting their plan into process and then analyzing that, that can be a real challenge for a lot of students to break down what they did and then to actually come to some conclusions. A lot of times they'll get to that point where they break down what they've done and they go, ta-da! Okay, what is your ta-da? And they kind of stand there like, see? And it's getting them to say, okay, what's that mean? What are the implications of that? How can you take that to the next step? Why do we care about that? The so what? That can be a real pitfall for a lot of students. So it's helping them to bridge that to really make sense of the so what.
Yeah, because they're trying to figure out how to situate their work in the body of knowledge that they're contributing to with their work. And sometimes it's really about, like Sarah was saying, about the methods. Then they have to kind of figure out, how do I actually do this thing? Because like Brandy was saying, we can't tell them what to do, nor sometimes do we have any notion what they should. Like ultimately, like, they're by that point, like they are the expert in the room. So they need to figure out like, and what is my next best step? So I think maybe that's the biggest place of intellectual growth is then like realizing, and I think if I figured this out more this year, maybe than ever before, like it is not that there is like one right path that they should be going down. There were many paths they could have taken. So it's about figuring out like, which one are you going to take and then just go. You need to commit sometimes and then follow that through. And then at the end, you can always like reflect on, and there's always like lots of pod questions about that. What could you have done differently and why is one of those classics. But they get to the end and then they realize, oh, I could have done this in so many different ways, but they don't know that until that moment.
You talked about contributing to the body of research. Can you talk a little bit more about that and the tie to academic identity for your kids?
I think we want them to see themselves as academics. And I try to talk to them about that there's a whole body of knowledge, other people. We talk about that people that research, they communicate with each other through their published research, right? They don't get to sit down like this at a table and chat with each other. But this is a useful metaphor that we can use, for students as well. But there's that tiny grain of sand that hasn't been filled yet in that world, and they have to fill that gap with the work they do, and just trying to get them to see themselves as capital R researchers. Like, you've filled that now. You have added to the world of information that people that are in your discipline care about, that spend their lives working on. And every year we have students, there's always a couple that we try to encourage to even publish their work because
Right.
they've done some really amazing analysis and come up with some new understandings, some conclusions that are important for other people to see beyond us and the mystery College Board reader that scores their paper in still very mysterious ways. College Board, I wish you would tell us more.
They never know.
What structures or norms do you put in place to help ensure that this is a supportive, affirming, and accessible experience for students?
I think part of that's the group process, because in seminar they have that built up, and then it's creating a place where we work more as a coach than as a teacher. So one of the things that College Board requires, it makes good sense that they require it, is that we have one-on-one conversations with the students, that it's not just writing on a paper or group instruction, that rather I have a little spot at my desk and the students come over and we sit down and we go through and talk about, okay, so how's this working? How's that? And I'll ask them a lot of questions. And so there's that process of collegiality that they have to develop with their teacher that can be a little challenging for most students. They're so used to the teacher being the authority figure, that sage on the stage, that directs everything. And a lot of times students choose topics that I don't have a background in. So I can ask them questions. I can look at it from a different perspective, but that collegiality, I think, develops in more ways than most students are used to, which was a challenge for me to step back and not be the teacher, not be the one that was always having the answers, but instead being the person that asks the question, that prompts them in a very different way, coaches them toward the best that they can do.
Well, I think, and you mentioned accessibility, and I think accessibility, that speaks to the philosophy that College Board has been using now for several years and that we have adopted here quite a while ago in our district, that not just our class, but all AP classes, that there needs to be accessibility, that we want kids to push themselves, whether they see themselves as the traditional AP kid or not. I mean, Matt could speak to that. That's the mission of his entire job, is making sure that we don't have barriers and that kids can have access to these experiences.
Every kid is an AP kid.
I love that. You know, you talked a little bit about that shift in pedagogy. And I was talking with a team recently about inquiry learning. It's very different for those of us who've been teaching a while to get from that place where we're giving the directions and we're saying the next step or we're giving the information. How did you shift your practice? And then has that, I know some of you teach classes that are non-AP classes. How does that impact your other non-AP classes?
The shift, I think, was, it took me a minute to get that I was making that shift. So AP Research is the first AP class that I've taught. I've taught speech and debate for 30 years now, and I teach a gen ed class. I teach senior English. But Matt actually came to me when we started the capstone program and said, this is your class. You need to go do this. And I balked. Nope, I don't teach AP. I'm not interested in that. Please take it away. And he said, no. You're going to go to training over the summer and then come back and tell me what you think afterwards. So I begrudgingly went to training, and
Begrudgingly.
But what I found was that it was actually very comfortable because of my work in speech and debate.
Okay.
And I've always assumed that was the reason that he decided that I would be an AP research teacher.
It was.
So, but a lot of what I do in debate is also that coaching. There are so many different debate-based activities that I can't teach every single one of them because I have students doing 9 different speech events and 5 different debate events. And so because there's such an array, I can't stand and direct teach every single one of those. I rely on doing a lot of more side-by-side coaching. And so it just took that adjustment in my thinking more than anything. But once I realized it was much more like what I did with debate. It was a comfy spot to be. I just had to get my brain set there.
Thank you.
I mean, it's a bit bonkers because we're more like project managers in a way, and the logistics of trying to keep everyone's like little choo-choo trains right on the track and that everyone's actually going in a direction, right? Whether or not we necessarily feel fabulous about it all of the time. But that's what they're trying to do. But I find, I don't know, it's like when I went to AP research training, I was just going as like, I was trying to be a good department chair and we needed another person to get trained in research. And then I became the only research teacher at Rogers. And that was an interesting transition. But I was a part of a really good district team. And that part was lovely. I found that research has also influenced the way that I teach just my other classes because students can be brave in research and try and figure some things out. I've been teaching AP Lit at Rogers now for 21 years. And so it's influenced the way that I end up teaching that course as well. So
I would say I'm still constantly having to recalibrate for the way we teach this class because it is so completely different than other classes. And I'm constantly questioning myself and making notes for the next year about how to coach and direct kids better. I think the struggle for me, at least in this class, is trying to walk that line of, again, kind of walking beside these kids, but still being the teacher in the room as well, and making sure I don't overstep that bound and allow them that opportunity that AP research provides. But yeah, it's hard because, like Liz was saying, sometimes they are working down paths that we on the inside are not thrilled about
Right.
or feel concerned about. And then what's awesome is when they surprise us. I had a presentation yesterday that I was like, okay, they did it. I didn't understand where this was going to go. I don't think I ever quite fully grasped it, but they did. They got it, and it was fine. But it's for me at least, it's hard to step back in that way.
None of us were trained to teach like that, right? We didn't start our careers teaching the way that you're teaching. But also, I think when we look at Danielson framework and we look at that leap to distinguished, it talks about all the things that you're talking about, that kids having responsibility for their own learning, for them generating the questions. So
I'm just proficient, according to Danielson. I don't know what distinguished is.
you're distinguished to me.
Thank you.
Shots fired. Well done.
How does having an authentic audience change how students prepare and present their work?
In high school, I was a theater kid, so like stage manager.
Really? No,
Yeah.
I had no idea.
It is shock to everyone. But
Okay, I just got to say, so Sarah just went through her whole thing that I coerced her into becoming an AP research teacher. Accurate. But the three of them bring their own personality. They bring their own backgrounds into what they do in their classrooms. It's just so obvious, each of the varied experiences that you have that then has allowed your students to become the things that they are and to research the topics, which is an AP research teacher is not just, hey, plug and play, person steps out and let's, put in the new puzzle piece and that person steps in. That's why, like at the beginning, because we were only starting at one building and looking at the entire staff of Puyallup High School, I was going, well, who else can do this thing? And it was like, oh, well, Sarah can. And then when Liz stepped into it, I didn't know Liz at all because Liz stepped into it at the last minute. Oh, my goodness.
that was fun.
That was fun. Little high stress.
I only cried a little bit.
Just a little bit. There's tears. Tears are good. Anyway, and Liz stepped in, and the first time we went through the institutional review board and started doing things with kids, it was like, oh, Liz, you're perfect for this. Like, varied experience. And I've known Brandy also for 25 years or something, 20.
A lot.
A lot. Yeah, we're all old. Excuse me, I'm old. They aren't. But anyway, same thing. I mean, each of them just bring a different perspective that allows for the students to flourish. So anyway, I interrupted you, theater kid.
No, it's fine. It was just No, at AP research training, though, they did act like I was absolutely insane. Like that, teach lit, and now you're doing this. And this is the two courses that you hang out in the most. So like, it didn't make any sense. So I felt very special. Because, of course, that sounds great. But I do feel like on the theater front, it's just like the performance piece of things. Like you have to kind of go along for the journey. You do all the things that you can in order to prepare for what that moment is going to look like. And then a lot of it is just like theater magic and jazz hands, or like going along with that, right? Because again, it's like you have deadlines that are set. You have things that are out of your control. You have things that are going to be set for you for powers beyond your control. And then you have to decide how you're going to meet that moment and what are you going to do.
I just would like to add that I too was also told I would teach this class. I was not asked, nor did I volunteer. So I guess we all three share that. I don't know what that says about the class itself, but yeah, 2 of us, I think, went to the training. And I will just say, Kevin Hampton, my principal at the time, said, "Yep, and Brandy, this is the class you will be teaching next year." I was like, oh, what? Great. And maybe that's just because it is so, it was, at least for me, it was just difficult at first. Like that first training, I was exhausted every day because I was like, I feel like I'm an intelligent person, but the training was, again, just having to completely adjust the way you approach your classroom. Yeah.
Right. How much training is it? How long of a training?
College Board is pretty picky about seminar and research. Like those are ones that like, not that they're not, obviously there's lots of different trainings available for all sorts of different courses that you can have teaching, but it was the first one that I had seen where there are all sorts of procedures in place that until you actually do the in-person training, which takes about a week, and I got the chance to go in person, but it was like right during that beautiful like COVID-y moment. So we were occasionally masked. How fun. But it was about a week. And until you actually finish that training, they will not let you into some of the like digital super secret, like, well, not secret, but like really like supportive spaces online. They're like, no, you don't get those permissions. You haven't.
But I just would like to say that even beyond that, I mean, not as much, but we met so much, so frequently of our own time, unpaid time. Just would like to say.
You're so distinguished.
I'm not. But that for me, I mean, has really been the best professional development because, I mean, Sarah was the one that taught it first and so well. And then just her kind of really taking us in and helping us to understand. And then even going to trainings after that and talking with other teachers like digitally or on the listserv. I feel like I will never know enough about this class, I guess. I don't really feel like I'll ever be at a point where, and I'm all trained up now. The end.
I did the initial training. It was by myself. I went down to Portland and did the 40 hours and had no idea what I was getting into. Walked out of there going, well, all right, we'll see where this goes. And then started trying to, with 2 weeks before school started, pull together something that made sense for the school year. But I ended that first year and said, I don't actually think I took in enough from training. So I went back and did it again the second year. I'm just trying to check and make sure I was on the right track because I think it does. Those first few years leave you going, I don't know if I did that right. I'm pretty sure I missed a lot somewhere. I have no idea because there isn't a curriculum map. No 2 teachers teach it exactly the same way. So after 2 years, I felt, okay, I think I get where this is going. So then I went to Matt and said, in the middle of COVID, I want to go do seminar training because I don't really see where they're coming from. And I feel like if I knew where they were coming from, I would have a better idea of where I'm going. So that was the third piece for me that really helped to cinch everything together to make me feel like I had a handle on my curriculum. But that was 3 weeks, 40 hours a week. It was some intense training. And then every year we have to go back and do training again. We have to pass a pod test. So it's an 8-hour day. We do 5 hours of training, and then we do a 3-hour test that we have to get a perfect score on, or else we can't grade the pods. So it's continuous training. It's not just a one and done.
Right.
We always threaten the students, or I mean, at least I do, right? That if I don't pass, right, then Mr. White is going to be stepping in. And we'll be
That's horrifying. That is tear-inducing.
I'm glad that I'm loved so much by your students.
revered. I appreciate it.
So when you think about all of the skills that your students need to be successful, are there skills that you think actually begin developing in elementary or junior high schools?
Like curiosity, if they can keep like it, I feel like that's the thing that I really try and I start the year with is getting them to, because they sometimes like, I don't know if this might partially answer the question, but like they sometimes come in with very set notions of what they're going to be doing. Like this is going to, I'm doing this. I picked my research question. I've been living the, yeah. And they're like, but sometimes it's not those, that is not always the best path for them, the well-trodden, right, kind of one that they've already gone down. And if they can get back into their like beautiful kid brain, the one that was just like very curious and understood that there were so many different ways of looking at a thing, or that you could pick up information from anywhere, that inspiration could come from anywhere, that would be a better way to begin sometimes than just doing the thing that you've thought about for months. Like being willing to actually do the brave, like small thing of just like stepping off of that and doing something else.
Yeah, that intellectual curiosity, which I know with my colleagues in my building, we sometimes lament the loss of that. Because I feel that that's a hallmark of success for so many of our students, no matter what class they take, just to have a curiosity about the world, an intellectual curiosity, almost a competitiveness about knowledge and wanting to know new things, and kind of like being willing to take the steps to get there instead of having somebody sort of feed it to them is so valuable. I don't know anything about elementary school, and I'm very happy to say out loud that I don't understand what happens there. Not because I don't think it's important and valuable. I think it's very important and valuable. Like that is just clearly what they do there. They teach kids to read. It seems like magic. I don't understand, but I'm not sure how you continue to maintain that in kids. That's a good question, at least for me. How do you keep curiosity? I don't know.
And I think in the face of all the challenges we've had with AI, developing curiosity at a young age is absolutely integral to what we do, because it's so easy for students to, at their fingertips, look up something. Oh, I want to know this. There's the answer. AI told me. And that's such an easy way out. In order for them to be the capital R researcher, we need them to have that ability to say, maybe that's not the simplest answer. Maybe there's a better answer. I wonder what that is. I wonder how I can get to that. And for so many students, it's one of the big changes in 30 years of teaching. It's one of the big changes that I think I've seen in students is that dwindling of curiosity, that ability to say, well, there's the answer. I'm finished. Whew. I did my packet. I'm done. And that for our researchers that's a huge hurdle. If we can't bring them in with curiosity to get them to actually go through the steps that they need to on their own, it becomes an increasing challenge. The student that walks in and goes, I know the answer, isn't a capital R researcher. We need them to be curious. I think curiosity is absolutely getting them to play and to be curious and to be creative. That's one of the things that our elementary friends can absolutely support us with. That's one of the things that we need. I would say we need that from all of our students. So
Right.
parents that are listening, curiosity, creativity, that's huge for our kids that are trying to take that next big step.
Thank you. So, if there are students or families out there listening who are thinking about pursuing AP research in the future, but are maybe on the fence, what advice would you give to them?
I would always advise any families and or students that want to know more about a class to talk to the teachers of those class. I feel so often kids do have questions. You know, we have a course catalog that's buried somewhere in our website. I have it bookmarked because I can never remember how to get to it. But come talk to a teacher. I mean, that's why we're here. You know, we would love to talk to you about our course and give really honest explanations of what it's about. And I would say kids can do, I feel like, a lot more than we think they can. And I find even kids think that about themselves. They think they're capable of something, that to trust yourself, that if you're willing to put in the work, that good things will come of that. But communication, just talk to us, email us, ask a question.
And I know like Mr. White does his road show every year of like wandering around trying to talk to as many students as possible and getting them to think about like, where are you headed? Like, what is so if you have like particular notions about what life after high school is going to look like for you, then it's nice to be able to backwards construct from there and what would like achieving those goals look like. Does taking seminar and research and maybe trying to go for AP capstone, does that fit into those goals? Or is it about like taking one advanced placement class in something that you're really passionate about and then getting the chance to kind of build out from there? So it's not, again, like I think everybody could do with more intellectual curiosity. Everybody could do with a little bit more challenge and specific things that they care about. So then figuring out in what ways would you like to do that with your life, and then goals, and then working back from there.
Well, one of the things, just go back to Brandy's original, this is like a college thesis, defending a college thesis for pods and what the course is like. That's in the roadshow where I speak to pretty much every 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th grader in the district. That's one of the first things I go, this course is the most like college. Yes. It is the most like you're going to actually experience. If college is what you are interested in, then you should go down the capstone pathway. Get yourself to research and go, whoa, this sounds challenging. Yes, college is challenging. It is hard. Learning is hard. And learning about things you're interested in or things that you might be interested in, and then having to dive into the deep dive that the kids do, that's what college is supposed to be about, to drive you to those levels of learning. And so from the beginning, I mean, we started with one section for Sarah. Now all 3 teachers have, we had 2 that first year? 2. Now all 3 teachers have 3 sections. I mean, this is why it's now like a full-time, it's a giant part of my job is to support them, just to make the pods happen, just to make this thing happen, that we are a full week, all day long, with panel members and kids presenting. I mean, it's a go-go show, which again, you go, what a kid goes, like, see the end. Like, you guys should probably bring up Night of 1,000 Stars. It's one of my favorite things. So each year in May, they put together a show. I mean, it's like the most insane science fair anybody's been to. And the kids stand there and people go around and they're like, oh, you did that? Oh, wait, how did you do that? You see them wander the room, and they don't just sit and stand in front of their trifold and just talk about their thing. I want to go see, or I heard about. That is exciting to see the kids see what other people did. And then invariably, I get some kid, I'll hear some student say, oh man, they did a really good thing. I think I probably should have. Like some sort of, and it's all done. Like the whole thing's done. There's nothing else for them to do with this topic, but you can see them go, oh yeah, that was a really good idea. Oh, how they did that. When the moms and dads and families come around and look at my child. They're so proud to see what their kids did. But the fun parts for me are when you can see the kids excited about what they did or really interested in what somebody else did. Those are the opportunities for any kid to show up. Like a seminar, we try to encourage the seminar kids to show up at Night of 1,000 Stars, because you go, what? Wow, this is what research really can be. So it's pretty cool.
And we probably all have. I've had kids in research that have, kept in contact with me. I just had one when I got back to school and started checking my school email again. In late August, I had a kid that had sent me a picture of, he basically was like doing pods, but up at UW and getting ready to go into medical school, and just wanted to let me know, hey, I did research with this. And I think he worked like with Fred Hutch or Virginia Mason, and just kind of talking about like, yeah, this is what happens when we go there. And so I wish more seminar kids would come. It's hard to coerce them at the end of May to come back to school, but it's a really cool night. And I think a lot of our kids, they get like research brains, because what starts to happen throughout the school year is I'll hear them in conversation and they'll, be knee deep in their own work and then go, I've been a good research question. We should write these down, Mrs. Gross. Like just every year, and we just keep thinking of more and more questions, things to think about, things that don't have answers.
That's how you know you've created researchers, right? When they're thinking that way. That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you for your leadership. As I shared with you, I've been able to sit in with all three of your schools over the past several years, and it is just something I look forward to every year. It's exciting for me to see what our kids can do. So thank you. And Matt, thank you for your leadership.
It is my distinct pleasure, like legitimately, to serve and support them. It's super fun.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As we wrap up today's conversation, I'm reminded again that learning doesn't happen in straight lines, and neither really does teaching. The pods may happen in high school, but what you heard today is really about something so much bigger: curiosity, courage, reflection, academic identity. It's about students learning to untangle their thinking, speak with confidence, and understand that not knowing yet is part of the process. To our AP research teachers, thank you for your leadership, your trust in your students, and your willingness to teach in ways that are bold, complex, and deeply human. And to our TandLers across the system, elementary, junior high, high school, and beyond, thank you for the foundational work you do every day that makes this kind of learning possible. If this episode sparked your curiosity or got you thinking differently about inquiry, reflection, or student voice, I hope you'll carry that with you into your classrooms, into your conversations, and your practice. Thanks for spending time with us today in the TandL Clubhouse. Until next time, keep wondering, keep questioning, and keep creating spaces where students can truly own their learning.